At Royal Valley High School, the golden morning sunlight poured through glass hallways that smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. Aline sat by the large window overlooking the courtyard, watching a line of students laugh, their voices echoing with carefree privilege. She smiled faintly, but her eyes looked distant, as if she was searching for something she couldn't name. Her father's fortune had built half the city, her mother's face was always in magazines, but inside, Aline felt like a guest in her own life, loved by everyone and understood by no one. Outside, Kevin hurried through the gate, balancing a heavy box filled with cleaning supplies. His shirt was faded, his hands calloused, but his eyes were alive, deep brown, filled with unshaken hope. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, trying to finish before the morning bell rang. When he tripped over a step and the box spilled open, papers and brushes flew everywhere. The rich girls standing nearby giggled. But Aline walked over, knelt down in her white uniform dress, and started picking up the scattered papers. The laughter stopped. "Here," she said softly, handing him a handful of documents. Their fingers brushed briefly, and Kevin froze. "Thank you," he murmured, lowering his gaze. "You don't look like someone who belongs here," she said, tilting her head. He gave a small smile. "Maybe not yet." That day marked something neither of them could explain, a connection built on difference. Aline found herself glancing through the classroom window at him as he cleaned the courtyard. He always worked with quiet dignity, as if his job didn't define him. When she smiled at him from across the glass, he'd nod once, a secret acknowledgement that they both understood something no one else did. One rainy afternoon, she found him sitting alone under the eaves of the storage building, reading an old torn science book. "You study?" she asked, surprised. "When I can," Kevin said, flipping a damp page. "My father used to say a book can be a door. I'm just looking for the key." Aline looked down at him, her dress brushing the wet ground. "And what if the door never opens?" He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Then I'll build my own." From that moment, she began sneaking him books, novels, history, old notebooks from her classes. He read every word, memorizing equations and poetry alike. They'd meet secretly behind the greenhouse, her heart pounding every time she saw his smile. But secrets never stay hidden long. One morning, the headmistress almost caught them talking near the classrooms. In panic, Aline pulled him inside the storage room, holding her breath as footsteps passed outside. Her pulse raced, she could hear his heartbeat too. When it was safe, he laughed softly. "You'd risk your place for me." "Maybe," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You make me feel alive, not like all of this," she gestured to the golden walls, "but real." Their bond deepened in shadows and whispers. Kevin began sneaking into the campus library at night. Aline covered for him, leaving the back door unlatched, her scarf tied to the handle as a sign that it was safe. She'd wait by the window until he was gone, her heart filled with both fear and fire. Then came the day everything changed. During class, a set of exam papers went missing. The teachers searched the school, and someone claimed they'd seen a boy near the classrooms. Panic spread. Aline knew it was Kevin. He'd come only to return a book he'd borrowed, but if they found him, he'd lose everything. When she saw him cornered by the guards in the hallway, instinct took over. She grabbed his hand and led him into her dorm, her breath shaking. Voices echoed outside. With no time to think, she whispered, "Don't move," and pulled him close, hiding him under the folds of her long dress as footsteps thundered in the corridor. Her heart pounded against her ribs, he could feel her trembling. The door opened, the headmistress entered, scanning the room. "Aline, have you seen anyone?" She forced a calm smile. "No, madam. Only me." After a tense silence, the woman left. Aline waited until the echo of her heels disappeared, then she lifted the hem of her dress. Kevin crawled out, eyes wide, his breath shaking. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," she interrupted, tears forming. "You don't deserve to be treated like a criminal." In that fragile moment, surrounded by silence and danger, he reached out and touched her hand. "You're the only person who's ever seen me." Days later, the truth spread through whispers. Some students mocked Aline, calling her insane. But she didn't care. She requested a meeting with the headmistress and confessed everything. Instead of anger, there was stunned silence. "You could have ruined your reputation," the woman said. "Maybe reputation isn't worth as much as a human dream," Aline answered quietly. Her courage changed everything. The school agreed to let Kevin study part-time. Years later, he graduated with honors, standing next to Aline in the same hall where they first met. When the ceremony ended, he looked at her and smiled. "You once hid me under your dress to keep me safe." She smiled back. "Now the world can see you and no one can hide you again." Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of their secret life began to feel almost natural. Each morning before sunrise, Aline waited behind the old stone wall by the servants' entrance, her breath visible in the cold air. Kevin arrived quietly, a satchel slung over his shoulder, his eyes alert yet full of trust. Without a word, she led him through the narrow corridor that connected to her dormitory. The ritual was precise. She would lift the folds of her long uniform skirt, and he would slip beneath, silent and steady, until they reached the classroom. Every step carried a risk, but their hearts beat in the same rhythm, fast, terrified, and alive. Inside the classroom, Aline sat straight, her pen poised over the notebook, while Kevin knelt behind her desk, half hidden by the folds of her dress. He listened to the lessons as if the words were drops of rain falling on dry ground. His fingers moved quickly, jotting down notes on the back of torn envelopes and scraps of paper Aline had smuggled from her room. Sometimes he whispered answers to her under his breath, helping her solve problems before the teacher called on her. It became their private language, a secret intelligence shared between two souls from different worlds. During long lectures, Aline could feel his presence close behind her, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the rustle of paper, the warmth that seemed to radiate from him even in silence. Sometimes, when the teacher turned to write on the board, she would drop a folded note behind her chair. Kevin would pick it up carefully and unfold it, reading her delicate handwriting. "Do you ever think about what would happen if they found out?" He would smile to himself and write back, "I'd rather be discovered learning than live my whole life ignorant." After classes ended, they would sneak into the garden, pretending Aline was collecting flowers for her room. There, behind the tall rose bushes, Kevin would emerge from hiding, stretching his cramped legs. They would laugh softly, whispering stories about dreams, hers of escaping her golden prison, his of walking freely into a library with his head held high. One evening, as the sky turned pink and gold, they sat on the old marble bench beneath the elm trees. Aline took his hand, trembling slightly. "Kevin," she said, "do you ever regret this hiding, risking everything just to learn?" He looked at her, his expression calm and certain. "No. Because what I'm learning isn't only what's written in books. It's what it means to fight for something worth believing in. It's what it means to love without shame." Her throat tightened. For the first time, she realized how dangerous this was. If anyone discovered him, he could lose everything, even his freedom. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she knew there was no going back. But fate never allows secrets to last forever. One morning, as Aline entered the classroom, a new teacher was substituting for literature. He was sharp-eyed, curious, and strict. Aline sat down, heart pounding. Kevin settled behind her desk, as always. The class began, the teacher pacing between the rows. Then, suddenly, he stopped near Aline's desk. His brow furrowed. "Miss Aline," he said slowly, "is something wrong?" She froze. "No, sir." He leaned closer, suspicious. "Then why is your chair moving?" Time seemed to stop. The class fell silent. Kevin tried not to breathe, every muscle in his body tense. The teacher knelt, reaching to pick up a pen that had fallen under her desk. For an instant, their eyes met Kevin's, wide with fear, the teacher's filled with disbelief. "Security!" the man shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. Aline stood up instantly, her face pale but determined. "Stop!" she cried. "He's not a criminal. He's my friend." The door burst open, and the headmistress rushed in. "Aline, what is the meaning of this?" "He came here to learn," Aline said, her voice trembling but firm. "He's smarter than half the people in this room. You only see his clothes, but I've seen his mind, his heart." The class was stunned. Kevin rose slowly, his knees shaking. "It's true," he said. "I wanted to learn. That's all. I never meant to deceive anyone, I only wanted a chance." Silence filled the room. Even the teacher looked uncertain now, caught between authority and awe. The headmistress studied them both for a long time. Then, Instead of shouting, she sighed deeply. Aline, do you understand what you've done? The rules you've broken? Yes, Aline whispered. But sometimes, breaking a rule is the only way to keep your humanity. That sentence hung in the air, heavy and beautiful. Days later, word spread through the entire school. Some mocked them, others were moved to tears. The headmistress, after a long discussion with the board, decided to give Kevin an opportunity, a scholarship, the first ever offered to someone from outside the school's ranks. Months passed. Kevin now walked through the halls proudly, wearing a proper uniform. The laughter and gossip faded into silence whenever he entered a room. Aline and he no longer had to whisper or hide, but they often smiled at each other knowingly, remembering the days when every word, every glance, had been stolen in secret. On the day of graduation, the hall was filled with applause and sunlight. Kevin stood at the podium, diploma in hand, and said, "I came to this school hidden beneath a dress. I leave standing in the open, because someone believed in me when no one else would." Aline's eyes shimmered with tears. When he stepped down from the stage, he looked for her in the crowd. She met him halfway, their hands brushing in quiet victory. Outside, as the bells rang across the courtyard, Aline whispered, "You see? You built your own door." Kevin smiled. "No," he said softly. "You were the key." The sun was setting behind the tall glass buildings of Vienna, painting the city in gold and soft crimson. Aline and Kevin stood on the rooftop of their new learning center, a modest but bright building at the edge of the city, where laughter and curiosity echoed from the open windows. The sign above the entrance read Hidden Dreams Foundation. Children played in the courtyard, chasing paper airplanes made from old lesson sheets. Every corner of the place was alive with hope, something both of them had once only dreamed of. Kevin watched the children for a moment, his expression calm but proud. "Do you hear that?" he said quietly. "That's the sound I used to imagine when I was cleaning the hallways back at Royal Valley." Aline smiled, brushing her hair back as the evening wind caught it. "Back then, you had only one dream to learn. Now you're the one teaching others how to dream." Kevin looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "You gave me that chance. You broke every rule that day, Aline." She laughed softly. "I broke the wrong ones to build the right future." Their foundation had started small, just the two of them teaching under a leaking roof with borrowed books. But people had noticed, donors, volunteers, and even some of Aline's former classmates who were now helping fund scholarships. The story of the boy who studied under a dress had spread far and wide, turning into a symbol of courage and compassion. But success didn't come without challenges. One morning, a government inspector arrived, demanding paperwork and questioning whether the foundation had the right permits. He spoke coldly, as if the place was just another statistic. Aline remained polite, but Kevin's patience was thin. "Sir," Kevin said firmly, "these children come here because they have nowhere else to go. If we wait for every paper to be stamped before we act, they'll lose their chance. We won't let bureaucracy kill their hope." The inspector hesitated, looking at the crowd of eager faces behind the classroom windows. Finally, his expression softened. "I'll see what I can do," he murmured before leaving. That night, as rain poured outside, Aline and Kevin sat together in the small office. The lights flickered, and Kevin looked tired. Aline reached across the table, taking his hand. "Do you ever wish we had chosen an easier life?" He shook his head slowly. "No. Easy lives don't make change. Hard ones do." Her eyes shimmered. "Then I'm glad I chose the hard one with you." The next morning, the rain cleared, and the air smelled of new beginnings. They stood together as a group of new students arrived, children from distant towns, their clothes worn but their eyes bright. Aline knelt beside a little girl clutching a broken notebook. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Elena," the girl whispered. "I want to learn to read so I can write my mother a letter." Aline smiled and handed her a new notebook. "Then today, Elena, we start your first letter." Kevin watched from the doorway, his chest tight with emotion. Every student reminded him of who he once was, hidden, afraid, but burning with dreams. As the sun climbed higher, they gathered the children under the big oak tree in the yard. Aline began reading a story aloud, while Kevin drew words on a chalkboard propped against the trunk. The laughter and voices blended into something pure, something that felt like redemption. Years later, when the foundation expanded into multiple countries, journalists often asked them how it all began. Kevin would smile faintly and say, "In a classroom where I wasn't allowed to be." And Aline would add, "In a heart that refused to look away." One evening, after a long day of teaching, they sat on the steps of their first school, the same one they had built with their own hands. The sky above them was a deep blue, scattered with stars. Kevin leaned back and said quietly, "You once hid me to protect me." Aline turned to him, her eyes soft. "And now?" He smiled. "Now I want the world to see what love and learning can do when they walk hand in hand." Aline rested her head on his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's never stop carrying dreams, Kevin. Even when the world forgets." And as the night deepened, their laughter and the echoes of children's voices rose into the sky, a promise kept, a dream no longer hidden.